Meeting now, please mute your.
This meeting is being recorded.
Sorry. So we're recording the meeting. We've done that previously so that we could use it for internal purposes, but the public participation plan that was adopted for BMC, one of the things we're doing is taking these recordings and posting them up on the BMC website. So this meeting will be recorded and available to the public, and we'll continue doing that for future meetings. So please mute your line unless you're speaking. You're welcome to have your video on and off, but it's nice to have it on when you're speaking. So we will now start, and Nate will call the meeting to order.
Thank you, Cheryl. I will call today's meeting of the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Group to order. Starling, can you take a roll call attendance for us, please? And have any let's do that first. Thank you.
City of Annapolis.
Present.
Anne Arundel County. Baltimore City.
Present.
Baltimore County.
Here.
Carroll County.
Hi, Claire Stewart here.
Harford County. Queen Anne's County. The Maryland Department of the Environment. Maryland Department of Planning. And MDOT Highway Safety Office. MDOT MTA.
Here.
And then we have MDOT SHA.
Here.
MDOT TSO.
Present.
Okay, the roll call is finished.
I think Dan Allen from Anne Arundel may have joined while we were doing the roll call.
Correct. It looks like I joined right after you passed Anne Arundel.
Noted. We'll correct that. Have that in the records.
Thank you.
Thanks, Charlene. And also want to provide an opportunity for any guests to introduce themselves.
Happy to go. My name is Eli Poussin. I'm a Inspire planner and the Baltimore City Department of Planning representative to the Mayor's Bicycle Advisory Commission. So thanks for having me.
Welcome, Eli. Good to see you.
Hello, this is Daniel Pascal. I'm the Mid-Atlantic manager for the East Coast Greenway Alliance.
Daniel?
Hi there, this is Nick O'Gara. I am GIS analyst with Department of Planning at Baltimore City.
Welcome, Nick.
Do I need to go? Dwight Tigner, GIS analyst, BMC.
Thanks for joining us, Dwight.
Hi, this is Erin Bolton, also a GIS coordinator here with Baltimore Metropolitan Council.
Hi, Erin. It also looks like Deborah's joining us from work.
Yeah.
So looks like we should have a quorum. Great, let's move on to our next agenda item, the approval of the March minutes. Minutes were set out in advance of the meeting. Any comments received or incorporated? And so do we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes?
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Thank you, Claire. Any comments on the minutes? If none, then we'll ask for those in support of adopting the minutes, say aye.
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 All those opposed, say nay. Minutes are approved. Great, thanks everyone. And moving down to our next agenda item, we've got Eli Prasant from Baltimore City Department of Planning to talk about the Baltimore Green Network Plan.
Is it possible for me to screen share directly, Nate? I don't know whether you're driving the slides or whether Charlene is driving the slides, but
So Shane, we've got Shane navigating the slides for us. That is his call.
That's fine with me, Charlene. Is that okay?
Sounds good. Thanks.
great. Let's see. Huh.
You should have permission now, I think, Eli.
Okay, let me hit the share button again because it was sort of like oh my goodness, Zoom is requiring I had to reinstall Zoom. I will I'll be right back. It's just prompting me to quit and reopen in order to allow screen recording. So apologies.
Would it be possible for us to share the screen and advance the slides? Or
yeah, why don't we stick with that then?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks.
So well, thank you everyone for the opportunity to present about the Baltimore Green Network Plan addendum. And my colleague Kyle Leggs is actually leading this effort on behalf of the Department of Planning, but I had presented about it previously to the Mayor's Bicycle Advisory Commission. And so I was sort of tapped to continue to sort of talk about it today as part of our effort to get feedback from people within the city and as well as around the area about sort of what we're planning. So Kyle, did you want to say anything to kick off before I dive into the presentation?
No, thanks, Eli. We just like to note that there's a team of us sort of working on the trail network and then bike planning initiative. So Eli has graciously agreed to present a similar type presentation that he gave to the Mayor's Bicycle Advisory Committee. So you're in good hands with Eli. That's about it. Thank you.
Thanks, Cal. So I guess to just start with the first slide, this addendum is an extension of the and so we can advance to that. Yes, thank you. So the Baltimore Green Network Plan, which was adopted by the Planning Commission back in 2018, laid out this kind of broad vision for the city that included both bringing new green spaces to Baltimore neighborhoods, in part addressing the increase in increasing scale of demolition and the creation of new vacant lots, and sort of how do we manage those lots. But it also sort of established this idea of an interconnected system of natural and recreational spaces through a set of what it termed community corridors. And that the objectives of that 2018 plan included enhancing identified corridors through a combination of improved walking and biking facilities, streetscape greening and improvements and wayfinding, and also sort of extending, connecting, or improving existing trails and improving access between neighborhoods and parks through bicycle and walking paths and enhanced street crossings. With the idea being really that our green spaces are only as good as our capacity to sort of get people to them and through them and enjoy them. So next slide. So the one real key element that I'm sure everyone's familiar with of that Baltimore Green Network Plan was the Baltimore Greenway Trail Network. What that plan had identified is really the centerpiece of this sort of like scheme of community corridors. The proposal for the Baltimore Green Network Plan and the community corridors sort of like map, basically what we had identified at the time, also built on the 2017 separated bike lane network addendum from the Baltimore Bike Master Plan as a way of sort of identifying what are the supporting facilities for people who are using scooters or micromobility devices or bicycles to be able to access this shared use path network that was being sort of laid out both in the plan and sort of advocated for by the Rails to Trails Conservancy and other partners. Next slide. So after we've been sort of working on this for a couple of years, and Kyle and others, our colleague Jeff Lanou, who had initially started the work on the addendum prior to his move to the South Baltimore Gateway Partnership, identified an increasing need to be able to communicate clearly with private development partners who owned property on or around the trails, as well as residents and other stakeholders about this vision for a shared use path or a trail network. And so our goals for this addendum are really sort of like come in these three big buckets. One, to sort of like share the city's goals for this network, including how it builds on our existing plans and what we expect the benefits to residents will be as the network is further developed and implemented. What the locations of future path and trail development opportunities are and where we want to see enhancements to existing facilities, and documenting the relevant design guidelines that can be so that they're all in one place and can be used as a resource by city staff and commissioners with the Urban Design and Architecture Review Panel, among other city bodies, for planning, design review, and ultimately the management and maintenance of these shared use paths and trails. Next slide. So as some folks, I know there's a few familiar faces on the call, know that I worked for many years as a historian and preservationist with Baltimore Heritage. So any opportunity to sort of dig into the history of these things these different topics is welcome. And so, so we have been sort of looking at what the existing plans are for shared use paths and trails and where they came from, in part because we inherited this sort of map of future routes from Jeff. And we were trying to sort out sort of which of these ideas are sort of Jeff's ideas and which of these ideas are really ideas that have appeared in a prior plan and have received sort of community support or community feedback at one stage or another in the process. Next slide. So again, as folks who've been sort of invested in trail planning in Baltimore for a while may be familiar with the 1904 Olmsted Plan, which really laid out this vision of the sort of like median parkways connecting large urban parks like Wyman Park Dell, Winds Falls Park, Leakin Park, Herring Run, connected by routes like 33rd Street or the Alameda. Of course, the planning didn't end there. We sort of, there's the Jones Falls Valley Plan in 1961. And then in the early 1990s, things like the Waterfront Promenade implementation strategy sort of beginning to sort of put some of these early visions into practice. Next slide. Those efforts continued. I was sort of, if folks are with an interest in this topic, might enjoy checking out the Maryland Greenways Atlas. I'll drop a link in the chat after I'm done sort of talking through these remarks. But it sort of like is one of these sort of early maps laying out a vision of sort of like and articulating the potential benefits of this kind of connected trail system, not just for Baltimore City. It has a dedicated map for every county in the state, and so you can begin to see through reports like that one, as well as the Gwynns Falls Master Plan from '96 and the Jones Falls Master Plan in 2000, the sort of bones of the existing trail network in Baltimore City begin to come together. Next slide. So you can see these between, over the last 20 years, and I guess we would add on the phase 5 of the Jones Falls Trail, which I believe was completed in 2020, 2021. I'm not sure if it's had a sort of like official dedication or celebration. It was sort of like the conclusion of construction was a little bit stepped on by the start of the pandemic. Next slide. So we also went back to both the 2006 and 2015 bike master plan for the city to sort of see what both of those documents had to say about path and trail planning. And of course, the 2006 plan, which was developed by the Department of Planning, interestingly, rather than the Department of Transportation, had a clear call to develop off-road paths to create a more connected trail system as part of this broader goal of a comprehensive network of facilities for bicyclists. And had specific objectives around sort of improving neighborhood access to trails, among other things. Next slide. The 2015 plan calls out that the implementation of those initial objectives was incomplete, and sort of folds them into a further goal to really continue the development and improve off-road paths for a more connected trail system, and identifying sort of like implementation of the waterfront promenade access study, which allowed bike access to the waterfront promenade, as well as improvements to some of the existing trails, like wayfinding improvements, is some of the key objectives in that 2015 plan. Next slide. We also, I think one way in which we're trying to make this addendum useful is that we've found that the recommendations and ideas for shared use paths and trails are sort of popping up in a bunch of different places, including both plans that have been reviewed and adopted by the Baltimore City Planning Commission, as well as plans that have been sort of taken on independently by community groups, and some of which have been accepted under the department's policy for community initiated, or the commission's policy rather, for community initiated plans, and some of which are sort of independent efforts that are taking place, often also in coordination with the Baltimore City Department of Transportation. And so examples of this include the Baybrook Connector, which was a project that the Greater Baybrook Alliance has taken on with assistance from Tool Design, and of course in partnership with the Department of Transportation, but also things like the Southwest Partnership Vision Plan, which included an idea that they've begun sort of like initial exploratory efforts around a sort of Carroll Park Heritage Trail that we'll have an image from that plan later in the presentation. So to try to identify where these plans are showing up and sort of how they've come together in, into a single consolidated document. Next slide. We also, as again, I'm sure everyone is aware that the initial implementation of the Baltimore Greenway Trail Network through projects like the Northern Segment Study have been prompting both support and opposition in different ways around the city. And so trying to find ways of navigating the responses that path and trail projects are receiving from residents around the region, and ensuring that we've got equitable engagement strategies that offer more than just meetings as an opportunity for neighbors to weigh in, and avoid in the process of trying to respond to community feedback to compromise the utility or safety of these designs is really essential. And so kind of laying out a roadmap around some of these thorny issues for city staff and commissions is another goal of this document. Next slide. So where are some of these future shared use paths and trails? The next slide. They'll probably be pretty familiar with for folks who are biking and walking around the region, but we've sort of loosely grouped them into these kind of 4 different categories right now. Things where we've got planned new paths or trails where none currently exist, opportunities to fill in smaller gaps within the existing trail network, or sort of enhance connections within the existing trail network. Supporting or complementary right-of-way facilities, so primarily for people who are biking or using micromobility devices. Things like, for example, this protected bike lane on the Harford Road Bridge that you can see in the image here. And more long-term trail concepts that aren't necessarily something where it's not necessarily part of a adopted plan. There's not necessarily a clear path to design or funding, but that we wanted to sort of document that this is a possibility that has been identified as part of our process, or has been proposed by residents or other stakeholders that we've engaged along the way. Next slide. And so just some examples of these are the within the Baltimore Greenway Trails Network, or of course the northern, eastern, and southern segments that have been sort of like mapped and reported in detail in prior publications, as well as some of these additional trail concepts, such as the Carroll Park Heritage Trail that you can see on the right, or extensions to the waterfront promenade to better connect it to Fort McHenry or the Maryland Cruise Terminal. Next slide. Of particular interest to this group is, as well, is perhaps the section on sort of like regional trail connectors, sort of things that sort of connect Baltimore City's shared use path and trail network to the network of the surrounding region. And so the four that are worth highlighting in this section are the kind of the Orangeville utility corridor / BG&E transmission line connector, basically sort of continuing on from the section that would be included in the Baltimore Greenway Trails Network on out, perhaps even as far as Overley, if Baltimore County was interested in kind of connecting on the other line of that utility corridor. The Baybrook connector, which sort of as the preferred alignment has been identified, would connect Cherry Hill to Linthicum, I think the Nursery Road light rail station. The sort of broader Middle Branch trail network, sort of in the recently adopted reimagined Middle Branch plan, which would connect sort of a wide swath of South Baltimore to the Patapsco Regional Greenway, as well as to the Baybrook connector, and the Catonsville, sort of the possibility of using the Catonsville Short Line Park as a way of connecting the existing Gwynns Falls Trail to the Catonsville Short Line Trail. The next slide. And Baltimore City's efforts, of course, benefit from those of the counties in the surrounding region, sort of projects that I know are underway, such as the planning for the North Central Railroad Trail feasibility study to connect the Jones Falls Trail, and the recommendation in the Anne Arundel County sort of walk bike roll Anne Arundel, the recently released plan, which I believe still includes the recommendation of establishing a better connection between the Baltimore and Annapolis Trail and the Gwynns Falls Trail. Next slide. So the design guidelines piece of this plan are drawn almost wholly from the Complete Streets Manual. Next slide. So the which in and of itself is really well grounded in the AASHTO guidelines for the development of bike facilities, and the Maryland State Highway guidelines for the 2015 guidelines for bike and pedestrian facilities. And so just in the interest of both the consistency and sort of like really no expectation that we could improve on the sound guidance that's already in that resource, we're sort of adopting those wholesale so that this will serve as kind of a quick reference to some of those other existing materials. But that also, where relevant, the Baltimore Landscape Manual, which is used for the design review, the site plan review committee, and the city's design review of private development projects also may come into play in some instances, depending on the nature of the project. Next slide. The other real key goal for this this addendum is to emphasize the importance of the planning for the level of service requirements that we see not just now but in the future. There's a tremendous amount of high density multifamily development taking place in Southeast Baltimore right now, around the corridor that's been identified for the sort of eastern segments of the Baltimore Greenway Trail Network. And so making sure that we are, where feasible, securing a 16 to 24 foot wide right of way for that for the trail, and even where possible, including amenities that could serve as a linear park, for instance, as the illustration by our colleague Ren shows that we prepared for a local developer to just sort of show the possibilities of how a trail can be better integrated into a development project, and how adjacent property owners can sort of enhance their development as well as enhancing the trail for the neighbors and visitors who are using it. Next slide. So we have a few links with additional information. I'll also drop a link in the chat to the Google Slides, which have a few minor updates from the slides that we sent to Charlene yesterday, but including contact information for me and for Kyle if anyone has any questions. I'll also drop a link in the slide we had used an interactive mapping application called Felt in the Mayor's Bicycle Advisory Commission meeting to begin collecting sort of feedback from people who are familiar with these corridors and wanted to sort of highlight specific issues or ideas that they had for potential improvements or trail alignments. And so that map is open for editing. Since my screen sharing wasn't quite ready to go, I won't do any screen sharing with that, but yeah, I encourage folks to check it out when they have time. So yeah, that's any questions?
Hey, Eli, this is Daniel with East Coast Greenway Alliance. Great presentation. Thank you. I was curious about how just kind of the core of the on-street in terms of how does that work with the trails. I'm thinking especially of the gaps that are still needed to be connected from the Inner Harbor to the Gwynns Falls and Middle Branch trails, and just kind of also for the rest of the city as well. But just what are some of the challenges, and also like if there's any kind of hope for moving those along with some of the funding that's federally available now.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and we certainly when we presented to the Mayor's Bicycle Advisory Commission, I think oh my goodness, our colleagues from the Rails to Trails Conservancy were similarly encouraging that Baltimore City could and should be taking advantage of the available federal funding to move this kind of vision forward. So one thing, just from like a practical standpoint, like where we're at is in part just working through the data of like, here's the maps that we put together in this plan, and here's the maps that we put together in this plan, and the alignments are slightly different in these plans. Which one was actually the more appropriate and correct alignment, and sort of being able to put together a map that sort of like shows all of those alignments together with clear information about like what facilities either are needed or proposed for those different locations, and which agency has kind of like administrative responsibility for sort of moving it forward. For the most part, I mean, like all of the right-of-way facilities, all of the bike facilities are being implemented by the Baltimore City Department of Transportation. And so we've been consulting in the development of the addendum with Patrick Patterson, who is the current lead bike planner for DOT, following some of the recent transitions in their program staffing. And so we don't necessarily have how to say, like control over the timeline for the implementation of those projects. And I know that the implementation of some of the proposals in the 2017 separated bike lane addendum, for example, has been significantly delayed past the original planned timelines for implementation. And so I guess I would say we haven't internally had like a conversation about how or whether to address that timeline question, and the sort of like the details around sort of like making sure that timeline is aligned with funding opportunities is like a conversation that Kyle and I haven't had yet. I don't know if Kyle, if you have any kind of like impromptu thoughts on that.
No, just that, we are, sort of in the process of feeling the need for sort of a resurgence of stakeholder outreach. I mean, not everybody's on board with certain segments of the trail or shared youth paths, and where there's areas of any remaining acquisition, we'll of course have to contact those property owners and so forth. So there's still sort of a bit of a piecemeal approach to various segments, be it the eastern segment, the northern segments, and so forth. So We have our work cut out for us, but we are working in collaboration with DOT, city DOT, to help with some of the stakeholder outreach. And we welcome comments and so forth from you all today. And so we think that this is an opportunity to help kind of gather feedback as well.
Thank you. Yeah, and I offer, my support if there's any way I can help, especially with the parts that are aligned with the Greenway. But yeah, working with Rails to Trails often.
Yes.
I know it's a huge undertaking, so yeah, I appreciate your efforts.
Sure. Yep.
Quick question for y'all. Some of the largest greenway segments that Baltimore City owns is actually in Baltimore County. Will any future addendums to the Green Network Plan incorporate recommendations for those properties as well?
Hi, Nate. That's Kyle. Good to see you, Nate. I would say that's on our to-do list. There's an extensive amount of segments to the overall trail network or shared use path network, so that'll be forthcoming in terms of our work as we look to establish, sort of the completed network of trails.
You're thinking of Loch Raven Reservoir in particular there, Nate, or?
Yeah, Loch Raven in particular, especially since that has segments that will contribute to the shared use path network at a regional scale. Yeah.
No,
it's the consideration.
It's a welcome reminder, actually. To be honest, I think that sometimes there's maybe like a I don't know, like continental US versus Alaska and Hawaii kind of like focus for us, that if it falls outside the sort of immediate bounding box, it doesn't exist. So yeah, no, that's we should be attending to that in this addendum.
Do you have any more questions before we move on to our next agenda item?
Well, thanks everyone for making the time. I'll drop also my my contact info and Kyle's contact info in the chat. And I do think we hope to circulate a draft of the document before too long. It's definitely been coming together over the last couple of months, and so want to make sure that it gets a good review from folks who kind of know the topic well.
Yes, and just many thanks to Charlene and the entire bike and ped group for having us today. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Eli and Kyle. And
Sure.
yeah, we look forward to seeing taking a closer look on the plan.
Great, thanks, Nate.
Our next agenda item is on phase 1 of the Patapsco Avenue Bicycle Pedestrian Bridge. As many of you know, this is an important connection in the Patapsco Regional Greenway that connects the Cherry Hill community over the Patapsco Avenue Light Rail Station. So we've got Virginia Olenek here to tell us more about that project.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm Virginia Olenek. I'm with the MDOT MTA Facilities Engineering. I'm the project manager for taking this project from the concept or the sketches that were shown a few years ago to a final design that's able to be constructed. Next slide, please. I just thought I'd touch on a few items, a recap of what you already know and that or have heard in the past, and then bring you up to date on where we are with the design plans. Next slide. So we all know that there's a longstanding issue of Cherry Hill neighborhood access to the light rail. It's much shorter for people to walk from Cherry Hill to the Patapsco Avenue station, but to do so, they walk on the bridge. And a lot of pedestrians are on the bridge. The trains slow down coming around the bend. Sometimes they have to stop because there's already people on the bridge and they have to wait until people clear it to be able to get into the station. Next slide. These are the links, I guess, that were discussed back when we started, which was, to connect to the Middle Branch Trail. We know that the West Patapsco Avenue rehabilitation is going on. We've been working with Michael Wilmore on coordinating the two projects and making sure that we can move forward with a bridge project that meets all the requirements of ADA and bicycle access. The phase 1 bridge, which would just simply provide the crossing of Patapsco Avenue. And then of course the Patapsco Avenue Patapsco Greenway from Elk Ridge to Guinness and Guinness to City. And then the Maple Road, Anne Arundel County BWI extension, and of course the BWI trail. Next slide. So this is what was developed during the grant application for the Patapsco pedestrian bridge. So we would provide a bridge that goes up and creates accessibility ramps, turns a corner, and goes across Patapsco Avenue, tying into the platform on the light rail station. Next slide, please. So now that we're into design and we start having some survey, of course, the engineers are looking at how to make the line drawing that we had on the previous plan work. And we've got some radii and some curves and a little bit of smoothness, which is better for bicycle access. Because of course, now you don't have to make left turns. You can actually ride a curve around if you're so inclined to climb the hill. The slopes will be ADA access with rest areas, and then come up to a sloping bridge that goes back down into the station. At this point, we have the environmental site assessment is complete. We had the design study report that was completed, and we had a decision-making meeting in March of 2023 that was to determine some of the key components of the final bridge design. They are working on the borings at this point in time, and we are expecting a 65% submittal in August. So some of the key elements that we needed to get into were, first of all, are we going to do a single or a double span bridge? There were concerns that a single span bridge would cost too much for the truss bridge. So we looked at both a single span 120-foot bridge and a double span bridge that would be 260-foot spans. During our determination there, special permission would have been required from Baltimore City to put an abutment mid-road. So that was not a desirable option. But in fact, when we looked at the costs, there's not a big difference in the cost, because of building that third support negates the savings in going into a shorter bridge. So we're looking at a 120-foot prefabricated truss bridge, a single span. Next slide. It'll be adjacent to the light rail abutments. It will not be, quote, tied into them. So the single span, again, is a better option. Next slide. The next point of discussion that we had was how to finish the bridge. We had a lot of options, from galvanizing to painting to faux wood. And from our perspective, we had to look at something that would be not only attractive, but that would be fairly low maintenance and somewhat corrosion resistant or tolerant of de-icing salts or things that might have to be put there to make it accessible year round. So the committee looked at it. We looked at the costs, or the group here in MTA, and determined that the aluminum finished bridge was going to make the most sense for us. The third element we needed to determine was what kind of decking. We've seen these bridges in greenways with beautiful wood decking, and they had options of doing things like diamond plate decking. Historically, we found that concrete is a much more durable material. It tends to be attractive. We are not in a predominantly green area. We're crossing Patapsco Avenue and going into Patapsco Light Rail Station. So we determined that a concrete decking would be the most low maintenance and no fall through type option for us to use on this bridge. So the final design element that we had to determine was what kind of a enclosure screening, what do we need to put on the sides of this bridge? As you can see from the pictures, there are all kinds of options out there. We feel crossing Patapsco Avenue like this, there is a need for something to protect both the cars and the pedestrians in this case, from throwing things, from flying objects, etc. But rather than dictate what might be acceptable to the community, we've opted to defer this decision until the summer, when we have 30% plans and we can go out and start meeting with the communities and talk about what they would like to see, and what would be an acceptable option. Next slide. So our next steps on this project are to complete the soil borings. They are ongoing. They actually may go into June at this point. Do the public engagement and design decisions. We have this as June, July of 2023, though I'm thinking at this point, since we're not going to have 30% design until August, that's going to get deferred a little bit as well. Begin the property acquisition. We are proposing to complete final design by July of 2024 and complete all the property acquisitions within that following year, and complete all the permitting and bid documents. At this point, we do not have dedicated funding to build this project, so the exact dates are a little bit up in the air until we determine how we're going to build it and what the time frame for that is going to be. And this is my contact information. Does anybody have any questions?
Hi, yeah, this is Tanya. Are the plans available online?
We do not have anything more than the plans I just showed you yet.
Can you share those with me individually or?
Sure.
Okay.
Daniel, I was curious, could you repeat again the plans for Patapsco Avenue itself, the facilities that are planned there, where this would connect to?
I have Baltimore City's plans. So at this point, Baltimore City is planning a shared use trail until it gets to the light rail station on the south side of Patapsco Avenue. Their proposal actually has a crossing on both sides of our entrance that would then tie into where our bridge came down right next to the light rail bridge, and becomes a shared use trail on the north side of Patapsco Avenue until it gets to the bridge. Per conversations with Michael Wilmore, the Patapsco Avenue Bridge is a whole separate project, so they are simply taking their work to that point and stopping.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can you share those too?
Sure.
I mean, you all probably know, we're trying to take over the Anne Arundel County portion of the Baybrook Connector, and we're getting a lot of opposition from the community. So I'm looking at this from the eyes of an alternative to Belgrove Road as a connection into the city.
Okay.
I think we'd always imagined that this would be a long-term potential connection, but that I think my initial thoughts had been Baybrook was going to be able to be implemented more quickly. But
yeah, that was the
as
idea.
you said, Tanya.
But I mean, some of the major hurdles are these bridges. They're just so expensive. So if this is a project that MTA is doing, you know, that's a plus for us.
Yeah.
What's the nature of the community pushback? Is it kind of the typical bringing the wrong kind of people to my neighborhood, or what's the
I think that's the gist of it, but if you just, all you have to do is Google "Stop the Baybrook Connector," and you'll see the petition and all the litany of bullet points that they are in opposition to, and they cite safety, they cite all kinds of reasons, but crime is in there as one of them.
Is there, I mean, among the partners that are on this call, I've heard a little bit from John Corin about that, and also from Meredith from Baybrook Alliance. Are there efforts that I can try to help support? I don't know if you all are meeting, or, you know, I would love to try to just do whatever I can to, you know, we have a lot of projects that get pushed back, and maybe I can kind of pull from other examples of strategies that might help.
We actually have, in addition to Baybrook, we're doing a Brooklyn Park mobility study at the same time, and we have a meeting, a public meeting on that May 24th, and I guarantee that this subject will come up at that meeting. So I think it's in person. I'm not sure if there's a virtual option, but I can let you know. That would be, you know, any help is appreciated. I think we're trying to approach it at this point from the perspective of, we really want to do some projects in Brooklyn Park. It's highly underserved. The conditions of the infrastructure are so bad. We really just want to help them, make it easier for them to get around, and defocus this connection with the Baybrook or region or anything like that, and just talk about it from the perspective of improving their current infrastructure that's not ADA compliant, things like that. And this is their opportunity now at this stage in the game, because, you know, the plans are still being developed, to massage it, to see, you know, get what they want out of it. So that's what the angle we're trying to take now.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Sorry, Virginia, I didn't mean to steal away from your
No,
presentation.
that's good information.
Virginia, looking at the plans for the bridge, it looks like it's just going to span Patapsco Avenue itself. It's not going to actually go over the railroad crossing. Is that correct?
Correct. Phase 2 is in our request for capital program funds in the out years to design from the top of the span over to the Cherry Hill neighborhood. But at this particular plan will only resolve the crossing of Patapsco Avenue and get people off the light rail bridge. It will not take it all the way to the community.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Virginia? Okay, thanks for joining us today. We appreciate it. Thanks for the info on the bridge project. Going on to our next agenda item, Charlene will talk about the changes to the regional bicycle facility inventory process and how it's going to work closely with MDOT SHA.
Thank you, Nate. So thanks for joining us today. We're going to present a few slides on the updated schema for the regional bicycle facilities inventory, which we'll probably refer to as RBFI to shorten that a little bit. And then I'll pass the presentation on to Aaron Bolton, our GIS coordinator at BMC. So next slide. The regional bicycle facilities inventory has aided in transportation planning in the region. However, there was a need to reassess the RBFI process to allow for the inclusion of a wider variety of bicycle facility types that are being built in the region, and also to prepare for the vision for a regional bicycle network project and to align with MDOT's schema, which will allow for level of traffic stress analysis. So first, some background. BMC began coordinating the regional inventory in 2016 after a vote by BPAG. The jurisdictions submit the updates annually on all bicycle and shared use facilities in the region, existing, under construction, programmed, and planned. And we've taken that information, consolidated it into the regional bicycle facilities inventory, and then incorporated it into an online map, and then a downloadable shapefile of the existing facilities, and we'll drop those links into the chat as well. So a discussion about revising the format of the regional bicycle facility inventory was held at the November BPAC meeting in 2022. It was during that meeting, it was determined that additional discussion and analysis were needed, since we want to make this change once and then not change it for a while. We then held a follow-up meeting in January with member jurisdiction planners and GIS staff to get their input and valuable feedback. We took that feedback and adjusted the schema. BMC staff also met with member jurisdictions one-on-one to allow for any follow-up questions. So that's just the background. I'm going to hand the presentation off to Aaron, who will provide additional information about the updated RBFI schema.
Thanks, Charlene. You can do next slide here. This is just a glimpse of what the available public online map looks like. Actually, let me just put that in the chat right now. Okay, next slide, please. So I think, did you cover some of this, Charlene? You were talking, or do you want me to? Sorry.
No, just at a high level overview. So
Okay.
whatever you want to do.
Okay.
Sorry, Aaron and I haven't coordinated as much because I was out sick yesterday. So we're winging it a
That's
little
okay.
bit.
So, one of the big goals here was to incorporate more bicycle facility types. The different types have been coming into popularity and being built since this was originated 6 or 7 years ago now. And we also, like Charlene was saying, we want to align it with the MDOT schema that Nate and his team have been using on a statewide basis. So this would sort of make both of these data sets work well together, simplify the annual update process. So we've met with many of you several times. And right now we have put out a request for updated data sets with the agreed upon schema. Those are requested to be returned to us on May 19th, which is this Friday. We have a few of those received so far, which is great. We'll be reviewing them. We'll probably be getting back to you all with some follow-up questions. I can see we have a few things to follow up with the ones that were submitted already. Just trying to get everything in really good shape right now, especially because Charlene will be working on this project for regional bike network. So we want to make sure we've got all of our data cleaned up as much as possible. And then once it's updated, we will send it back to member jurisdictions. That will include the planned facilities. For if you want to, be looking at your own planned facilities or planned facilities across jurisdictional boundaries, but then that the planned facilities won't be shared like as public data, for download or anything like that. Next slide. So just to give an overview, our old former facility type categorization was these 5 categories, and that was the extent of the information that we had about the facility. So bike lane, separated bike lane, shared designated bike route, sharrows or a marked share lane, and then a shared use path or transportation trail. Next slide. So what you see here is our new schema is going to basically involve 2 fields. One will be the facility type in these 4 broad categories. Shared use paths, protected bike lanes, standard bike lanes, and shared road lanes. But then there's also will be subtypes within those that we're hoping to track, so that gives us a little more information about what the facility type is on the ground. And then what you see in the 3rd column here is how, in the green, is how our previous schema lines up with this. So this at very minimum, we're hoping to convert the schema over this way. If it was, for example, bike lane, it will now be a bike lane. That makes sense. But if you have more information about facilities that are cycle track or protected bike lanes, things we didn't have categories for originally, we're hoping to capture that additional detail when possible. Next slide. So we also, Charlene developed a set of definitions and examples that'll hopefully help, as you know, planners and GIS staff are often working together to make these kind of updates and to keep track of your bike facility inventory. So, you know, you'll see here definitions for some things that have maybe caused confusion or questions that were asked in the meeting. We especially tried to address a separated path for side paths versus multi-use trail. You know, what does that look like? What's the difference? Next slide. Another one here that we're hoping to make this distinction is between a buffered bike lane and a protected bike lane. So in our previous schema, we only recorded whether it was a buffered bike lane, or I'm sorry, separated bike lane, which was really both of these categories. You know, anything that was a bike lane that was separated from the flow of traffic. But here we're looking to make a distinction between a buffered bike lane where there's only like a horizontal separation. You can see in this lower photo, the painted striped area in the road, versus a protected bike lane where you have some sort of vertical separation like flex posts, or in this picture here, a concrete curb, planters. This could also include parked cars, barriers, parking stops, that sort of thing. Next slide.
I can speak to that, Aaron, if you want. Like Aaron said, we're in the process of getting the data from the member jurisdictions. So as that comes in, Aaron and her team reviews that, and then they'll come to you guys with any questions and clarification. So this summer we'll work on finalizing the updated regional bicycle facility inventory, getting that to you all, and getting our maps and web apps updated. And then we'll coordinate with MDOT to incorporate this updated data into the bicycle facilities inventory that the state is using. And then this data will be used for the vision for the regional bicycle network, which we are wanting to launch this summer/fall. And you guys will be intimately involved with that project. So that's all I had for today. Does anybody have any questions?
So just to confirm, we are doing the conversion and then sending you our data to this new schema. We're doing that on our end.
Yes, correct. We sent out a data set that has the old data set plus the new fields. So, you know, just converting it should be fairly straightforward, but we wanted to, you know, have your team do that so you can look at places where you're like, oh, but we know that this one facility is such and such a type, and now we can capture that in the schema. But if this like seems confusing or you're not sure, you know, where to get started, I'm really happy to like have a short meeting. We can just take a look at it together, go over any questions or, you know, examples like, well, what about this one? What would be the best way to do it?
Okay. And did I miss it? I didn't think I saw just a standard bike lane. I only saw separated and buffered.
No, we do have it. Shane, could you go back a couple slides? No, that's a good question.
And how would you categorize a shoulder that's been marked with a bike lane marking?
This is the one, yeah. Okay, so to your first question, in the middle, standard bike lane.
Okay, I see
the third category down. So there is just a regular bike lane, you know, and a lot of our facilities are obviously going to be that type. And then you said a shoulder.
Yeah, often we will just make a shoulder a bike lane by putting the bike symbol in there, but it's technically a shoulder.
I think, Charlene, would that be this very bottom subtype here, which is shoulder?
Shoulder?
I think so. Nate, do you think that's
actually no? It's actually, if it's marked as a bike lane, if it's got the pavement markings and the signs to go with it, then you would set it as a bike lane.
Okay. So your category of shoulder here is just that, shoulder without any markings for bike.
That's how we envisioned it. Yeah. And I know in Nate's schema that gets pulled into a separate main type, but here for simplicity's sake, we're just keeping it under that one. But yeah, that would just be for like I guess there's some cases where a shoulder is used to connect like two other parts of a trail, and that's important to like capture and note that that's the, you know, the intended facility there is for riders to be on the shoulder. But
Well,
that does make sense what Nate is saying. If it's marked, it should go under.
bike lane.
Yeah, so the way that shoulders are incorporated into the LTS, while we all know that shoulders, even, you know, if they're marked as a bike lane or not, if it's a bikeable shoulder, then the way that the model for the LTS is written, it really just looks at the other attributes of the speed and the traffic volumes first, and then it looks at if that roadway has a shoulder. And if it does, then it'll kind of default and treat it like a bike lane. So like, we don't want to capture every road that has a shoulder. That's just a maintenance nightmare for data. But we do want to make sure it's accounted for. So don't feel a need to go mark a roadway shoulder if it's not marked as a bike lane. But if it is, then yeah, definitely let us know where it is, because not only does that add to the inventory, but then it also confirms that we know that if it is a bike lane on a major arterial, that it really probably won't affect the LTS.
Okay, so that's a relief because we don't have an inventory of every road that has a shoulder in that bike map. But you're saying if we see a shoulder that does play an important connection role, you do want to see that in the bike map, or you don't?
No.
Okay.
Just if it's something that you want to keep track, it's more there for our jurisdictions. Like if you're using this as your primary data for Anne Arundel County, and you have, yeah, a segment that you consider part of a larger bike facility, but it is a shoulder, that's where you can put that segment. But absolutely, we don't expect, we're not expecting people to inventory shoulders that are bikeable. Like Nate says, that's kind of taken care of automatically in the LTS process. But so back to your original question, if it is marked though in some way, then treat it like the bike lane. If it's marked as a lane, but it's basically occurs on the shoulder.
Okay, thank you.
And as you guys do this, if you have questions like that, definitely reach out to me and Aaron, and we'll coordinate with Nate and just make sure we're all on the same page. Because the thing we would really like is to have this data be compatible with how you guys are categorizing it, and then with the state. And then that should hopefully make the process easier as we update in the future.
Absolutely, yeah. And if the other questions like this come up too, I mean, maybe there's some category we've missed here or some situation we need to address in a different way. And we'd rather sort of know that than to be shoehorning it into one of these places that it really doesn't fit. So we would appreciate that feedback for sure.
If any other strange places do come up, feel free to email that location with like a Google pin to Aaron, Charlene, or I. You know, I definitely want to see what we said there.
Could I ask a quick question? Is there a reason for the vision for a bicycle network is categorized that way instead of a trail network? That would be walking and biking.
No, let's see. Regina, would you be able to speak to that with Howard County's submission to UPWP, or do you want me to tackle it?
I'm not, I think we might have to think about that for a moment before a thoughtful response.
Okay, we'll get back to you on that, Daniel.
Okay. And also transportation trail versus side path, what's the distinction there?
So transportation trail isn't a category that we typically would use, but it's something that we left in because some of the jurisdictions tend to use it. I think Baltimore County might use it, but if you don't use transportation trail as a category, don't worry about it. But we wanted to make sure we were able to accommodate a schema or an item that was already used by jurisdictions.
Gotcha.
And is
Daniel,
that the same motivation for cycle track? Like, I don't understand what the difference between cycle track and the rest of them are.
Between cycle track and which are the rest of them?
There's cycle track, protected bike lane, and protected contraflow bike lane.
So a cycle track is basically a two-way protected bike lane. So you've seen those on the side of, I think it was actually in that example photo. So it'll be, you know, it's separated two-way protected bike lane. And then the protected bike lane would be one way, and it would be going the same direction as the motor vehicle traffic. And then a protected contraflow bike lane is if the bike lane directionality was going the opposite of the motor vehicles. So if you've maybe got a one-way street, but you need to make a connection, going south while the traffic's going north, that's a contraflow bike lane.
Okay. And this might be a little off topic, but is there any possibility of not using the term cycle track? Because I've heard concerns that the term sounds daunting to non-bike people. It sounds like a competitive thing. It's like for, velocidomes or, it just doesn't sound like a low stress thing for people that are not accustomed to cycling. Again, that's probably off topic here, but it seems like it would be worth consideration if this is going to evolve and feed into something that becomes institutionalized.
So the way we set it up for MDOT, we use cycle track as a sub-facility type. We didn't use this as the primary for the similar reasons that you're noting. We wanted to go with protected bike lane to give it kind of that more all-inclusive kind of type. Even though cycle tracks are protected facilities, we wanted to emphasize that the protected part of that name.
Agreed. That's our intention too, Nate.
We have one more question. I'm going to let Andy, a GIS guy, ask it.
Hi, yeah, so we before were considering a separated bike lane as what you would classify as a protected bike lane, and so that's how it is currently in our schema. Was that never the case? Did you never had something for a protected bike lane? Everything was just considered standard?
We had separated, which would include the protected and the buffered. So a separated bike lane would be, a protected bike lane that had bollards would be in that separated bike lane category, but also a buffered bike lane that only had paint on the pavement, that would also have been included in the separated bike lane.
Okay.
And some research has shown that having, those vertical dividers tend to make the facility more comfortable for people. So we wanted to differentiate.
Okay, that's fine. So really where it says previous facility type, you would have also put that under protected. I agree we need to separate into two categories, but okay, I understand now.
Right, so if you think that everything in your current separated bike lane category is actually protected, then you definitely want to convert it to that instead.
We will, because it is.
Okay, excellent.
There's not many.
And that's why we didn't want to do the conversion for you all, because we want, we're hoping that local knowledge will help get a little better result in that. So that's great. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on the bike facility imagery? My last comment would be to remember that when we do update these facilities, it plays right into our LTS, which then contributes to our updated bicycle network analysis. So as this data is updated, our results are improved. So we really appreciate everybody's contribution to their data on this effort. Really appreciate Aaron and Charlene for taking the charge on it. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, you all.
So next agenda item is an update on the Resilience 2050 plan. And Zach Hoffman of the BMC is going to share some information on the public comment period of the plan and what the next steps are.
Yes, good afternoon. Thanks, Nate. Here, let me get everything ready here. Okay. So as Nate said, my name is Zach Hoffman. I actually used to work with BPAG, but that was a number of years ago. So most of those folks have probably moved on, but now I am a transportation planner with BMC, working on the long range transportation plan. I'm here to present a brief summary of the LRTP development process, but mostly focus on the project list as well as the public comment period for the next long-range transportation plan for the Baltimore region, known as Resilience 2050. So for those not familiar, the long-range transportation plan is one of the federally mandated documents for MPOs. It addresses at least a 20-year planning horizon beyond the timeframe covered by the TIP. So the TIP is a short-range programming document of federally funded transportation improvements over the next 4 fiscal years. The BRTB will be voting on the 24 to 27 TIP in conjunction with Resilience 2050 in July. And so the planning horizon for the long range plan starts immediately afterwards at 2028 and extends through 2050. The long range transportation plan is updated every 4 years. This is in non-attainment areas. So these are areas that don't attain air quality standards. The Baltimore region does not attain the air quality standard for ozone. And so we update our long range plan every 4 years. It's also required to be financially constrained by revenues available to the region. And the core of the plan is a list of planned major federally funded capital projects, estimated costs and year of expenditure dollars for those projects, and the revenues expected to be available to fund those projects. So there's a fairly long planning development process for the long range transportation plan. Started in fall of 2021. We worked primarily through our technical committee for the technical committee and the board to approve a number of different resolutions related to the planning process. First was goals and strategies for the region. There are 9 overarching goals in the LRTP, along with a number of implementing strategies that help us to achieve the goals. These were approved by the BRTB in November of 2021. Candidate projects always exceed the number of projects that we can actually include in the plan. And so we need a prioritization method for the candidate projects. And so we updated and improved a project scoring methodology also in November of 2021. So the planning horizon, as I said, extends through 2050. And we do a variety of analysis of the potential effects of the projects in the long range plan, and that requires a forecast of population, households, and employment through 2050. These are key inputs to our travel demand model. The forecast through 2050 are known as round 10 and were approved by our board in July of 2022. And finally, we approved a financial forecast of revenues anticipated to be available over the planning horizon from 2028 to 2050. These are local, state, and federal forecasts of funds for operating, system preservation, and expansion that are anticipated to be available from 2028 to 2050. So to give you an idea of what that looks like, this is a comparison of funds by category for Resilience 2050 and the prior 3 LRTPs. Operating has and continues to take the lion's share of anticipated revenues and expenditures. It's held constant at about 53-ish% of all funds. For Resilience 2050, it's about $37 billion over the planning horizon. System preservation needs have gradually increased from about 17% to about 26%, about $20.9 billion available for Resilience 2050. And as system preservation has increased, the funds available for expansion projects has decreased to about from about 30% to about 21%. And so not all of this funding, it adds up to about $69.5 billion, but not all of this is available for projects submitted for Resilience 2050. Most of those projects compete for this $12.06 billion in expansion funding. So we select a preferred alternative of major capital expansion and system preservation projects. These were selected based on project scores. So there are a number of scoring criteria that come from the regional goals that projects are scored on, along with a policy score that is composed of how big of a priority the project is for the submitting jurisdiction. So we kind of order projects from the highest scoring to the lowest scoring. We have estimated costs for every project in year of expenditure dollars. And we have revenues anticipated to be available. So that's kind of the constraint on the number of projects that can be included. 98 candidate projects were submitted, 62 roadway, 36 transit. Ultimately, after the project selection process, 56 roadway projects were able to be included, and all of the transit projects scored well enough to be included. So the preferred alternative is composed of 92 projects. As I mentioned, the vast majority of these compete for the 12 billion in expansion funds. There were also 13 non-capacity expanding system preservation projects submitted, all of which were included in the preferred alternative. These are primarily transit system preservation projects. There are 2 phases of zero emission bus transition. There are MARC and light rail overhaul projects. There are a number of non-capacity expanding projects in the city as well that are roadway system preservation projects. As I mentioned, all of those were included. The graph here is a breakdown of expansion investments in Resilience 2050. Overall, about 59% of the funding is roadway focused, and about 41% is transit focused. The preferred alternative also includes 250 million in set aside funding from that expansion fund. So this is part of the preferred alternative to support various strategies intended to improve air quality. Some of those strategies include TISMO, which is intended to optimize the performance of existing roadway infrastructure without adding capacity. Complete street strategies focused on creating roadways that are safe and comfortable for all users. Strategies to reduce emissions through cleaner technologies, capital improvements, and behavioral incentive programs. And finally, the board elected to include the full list of regional active transportation priority projects identified by BPAG in 2022, which I think you'll be familiar with. So this is that list of priority projects that went through that prioritization process that BPAG did in 2022. You'll be familiar with these. There are projects in every jurisdiction and some regional projects like the Patapsco Regional Greenway. So these are included as part of the preferred alternative in the major capital projects chapter of. So I mentioned that there's a public comment period. It began today and extends through June 20th. This is a comment period for the LRTP for the 24 to 27 tip and the associated air quality conformity determination. We're holding 8 meetings throughout the region, 1 virtual meeting next Wednesday at noon, and then in-person meetings in every jurisdiction starting Wednesday, May 31st in Carroll County, and the last meeting is Thursday, June 15th in Howard County. Okay, I wanted to highlight a few resources. I won't take too much longer, but publicinput.com/resilience2050 is really the central hub for our comment period. There's information on each document. You can download PDFs of the document. There's information on meetings and information on how to share comments. One particularly useful item that our GIS staff worked really hard in implementing was a story map. It summarizes the development process, going from the goals and strategies through the various trends that we looked at, the socioeconomic forecasts, to selecting candidate projects, funding information, preferred alternative. And then there's an interactive map of all the different projects that are included in the plan. You can click for more details. It includes in these green dashed lines all the various BPAG priority projects that were also included. So you can click and get a lot more information on costs of projects, et cetera. This is a BRT line from Annapolis to New Carrollton. Also information on the tip and the air quality conformity determination here. but wanted to highlight the Resilience 2050 interactive map. We also have all of this, all the documents and downloads and stuff on our website. And finally, I list the white papers here in the presentation. One challenge with the LRTP is that it's just such a long planning horizon between like goals and strategies, where we have the public comment period, to the release of the draft plan and the project list, which we've done now. And so as part of an attempt to bridge that gap, we released a series of white papers over the past year and change that covered a variety of LRTP topics. And so this is a good place to go for background information on a lot of different topics discussed in the LRTP. Okay, well, that's all I had for my presentation. Please check out more of the links if you're interested, comment, attend a meeting. Anyway, thanks.
Thank you, Zach. Any questions for Zach? Zach, can you just put some of those links in the chat for us, and so we'll be able to check them out?
Sure, I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
So that Resilience 2050 site on publicinput.com, that's not actually publicly accessible yet, right?
I believe it is as of maybe an hour ago. We've been kind of frantically uploading documents and making a few edits. So I might have to check my email to confirm, but I think it is active.
Yeah, it actually says the project page you navigated to is currently in draft mode. So I guess not.
Okay, well, I'll have to check in with Monica Haynes-Binketta, our public involvement coordinator. If it's not active now, it will be very soon.
Okay, fair enough.
Apologies for that. We were finalizing some stuff and we had a bit of a file size issue with some of the PDFs. But I believe the story map is fully active and open for viewing, and that has, you know, all the project information as well.
Great, thanks, Zach.
Sure.
Yeah, please attend some of these public input meetings if you can. It's important that we get public participation in some of these longer range plans.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you.
Sure thing. Going down to our next agenda item is a presentation on the Bike to Work Week 2023 update, and Shane Sarra will give us an update on that. Shane.
Thanks, Nate. I just have a really brief update on Bike to Work Week 2023, which, as I'm sure you all know, is underway now. So this is our registration numbers as of this morning. So we've got 1,629 people total registered. As a reference, last year for the entire week, there was just shy of 1,800 people registered, and we expect that we'll have more total this year. So there's 16 local events throughout the region, which is 2 more than last year. There's 8 in Baltimore City, 3 in Baltimore County, 2 in Harford County, and 1 each in Anne Arundel, Carroll, and Howard counties. The bulk of these are on Friday, which is Bike to Work Day. There are a few, there's a few tomorrow as well. There's 27 t-shirt pickup locations throughout the region, which is also 2 more than last year. There's at least 1 in every jurisdiction. These are, for the most part, bike shops where people can go during the week to collect their event t-shirt. And we had 14 event sponsors, 4 gold level, 5 silver level, and 5 bronze level. this is one less sponsor than last year. One thing that also returned from last year is our WBA-LTV partnership. This is some examples of some of the ads that are on the WBAL website and other websites. They also created a PSA with Jason Newton to promote Bike to Work Week as well, which has been shared on all of our social media channels and has been shared with all the jurisdictions as well. So they may be sharing it on social media as well. And that's everything. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Hi, I have a question, Miss Tanya. The numbers for our county, I think it was 216, but then broken down, somebody said it was only 33 going to the event site.
So 33 people have registered to pick up their t-shirt at the event in Annapolis. That doesn't necessarily mean that 33 people will be attending, just means that that's how many people will be collecting their t-shirts there.
Okay, yes, thank you, because that seemed kind of low.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's quite a few bike shop t-shirt pickup locations in Anne Arundel County, so I expect many people will be going to those to get their t-shirts before the event.
Are these only Central Maryland? Because I don't see Frederick County, and I know they've been doing an event for several years.
Yes, it's just these counties that fall under our Bike to Work Week. Frederick County falls under Washington, D.C.'s Bike to Work.
Okay, thanks.
And then I dropped the link to the Bike to Work Week website in the chat, and then a link to the PSA that WBA TV did for us, if you're interested.
Thanks, Shane. Any other questions for Shane? Everybody who is going to be busy this week with Bike to Work Week stuff, best of luck on you and with your events. And thanks for the update, Shane.
Hey, quickly, I do have a question for Shane. I should know this because I've been on the stakeholder advisory group, but I've seen the signs around Annapolis, the yard signs. Who's responsible for putting those up? I mean, I was happy to see them, but it wasn't me. And,
Jessica.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
I guess a good question, just kind of about the scope, considering the changes that have happened with the pandemic and working from home. I know some biking to work numbers have dropped in other regions. I don't know if it's true of this region, but and I've seen some events kind of change the idea of like bike to wherever, or, bike to, go get ice cream or something like it. Has there been any drop in numbers because of the pandemic and remote working? Have there been changes that you all have noticed, and any reason to kind of think about future ones differently?
Yeah, I can speak to that, Shane, if you want.
Go ahead.
So we were getting around 2,000 people consistently, and then we took it remotely during the pandemic, and we did see a drop during those years when we were remote, but we did have good participation. Last year was our first year back in person, so that was 1,800, so a little bit lower. So we're around the same amount as we were pre-pandemic, but not growing, which that makes sense. And we debated the same thing, we talked about that. So Bike to Work Week's been celebrated. This is our 26th year. It's a strong brand name, but as you said, people aren't always commuting to work, and so we've been trying in our messaging to say bike there, bike to the grocery store, bike to your coffee shop, bike around your neighborhood. So we're trying that with the messaging before we take a big step to, maybe change the title of the event or something like that. But that's always an ongoing conversation, definitely. And if you ever have feedback or input about Bike to Work Week, we love hearing it, because, we don't know everything and not on the ground in every single one of the jurisdictions all the time.
Yeah, no, that all makes sense. And it's good to hear that the numbers have kind of crept back up. Yeah, I have no idea how much, funds are available for this. And it sounds like it does have a good brand and people get excited about it. And as an advocate, the only thing that makes me cringe is like, it's the adage of like, well, you want every day to be bike to work day and every week to be that. I don't know if there's events that could, or even ways to spread that funding out so you could have something like kick off the spring and then have something at the, the last Friday of every month going into the warm seasons or something, like ways to make it more all year round and not just feel like this one kind of celebrate it and then forget about it for a year.
That's good input. Thank you.
In years past, BMC has done follow-up surveys throughout the year for people that have gone on to gotten into biking to work as part of Bike to Work Day. So the change in behavior is slow, but the event is a good way to kind of get people to see that. So
Thanks
it's
for
a lot
saying
of
that.
work.
I forgot about our, and we'll do it before and after survey for this as well. And one of the questions we ask is, are you biking more since the event happened? And do you think you will? It's people may be overly optimistic, but we can get some kind of an idea. And one of the big things we found is just connecting people with a community. So whether it's with the bike shop that they go to pick the t-shirts at, or they meet somebody at one of the Bike to Work Day events, that's really been shown to help get people into biking regularly is to find other people who are biking in their community.
Moving on, we'll go on to our roundtable discussion, a report on updates from our member jurisdictions. So we'll just go down alphabetically, starting with the city of Annapolis.
Okay. Well, we're continuing to work on our state and federally funded major projects, the West-East Express, the College Creek Connector, and the Hilltop Lane Connector. All of those are at approximately 30% and kind of moving into the next phase of design. We have a big event coming up at the end of this month to kind of share all of these projects happening. It's kind of a citywide community event at the People's Park in downtown Annapolis. And so that should be a great event. Our Bike to Work Week event is tomorrow. And that's at City Dock. That's kind of an annual event that we do with the county, with Anne Arundel County, and usually has a pretty good turnout. So looking forward to that. Our bike share, scooter share program is still going strong. And Tony may mention it, but we're close to having the Anne Arundel County area just outside the city have their own agreement, and so the program will expand. But I continue to get calls from other jurisdictions who are interested in doing a similar program. Just spoke with Columbia Association this morning. Yeah, we've been really happy with that program. We're applying to a few other grants coming up, Maryland Bikeways, the Safe Routes to, Safe Streets for All. And finally, I guess the only other update is that we have a BMC project for our bike standards and the Bay Ridge Avenue connector going from downtown Annapolis to the Quiet Waters Park. And I would say we're probably about 50 to 60% through that project right now, and it's going pretty well. I think that's what we're going to be. Right now, that's our plan for advancing through the Maryland Bikeways program. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Anne Arundel County.
Hi. So yeah, as Eric mentioned, Bike to Work Day, we're partnering tomorrow with that. We would have done it on Friday. Usually we do it on Friday, but I think that was the only day that we could get the county executive and the mayor available. what else? Oh yeah, we're bringing Bird, as he also said. The agreement's actually signed, and tomorrow we're launching it. And we sent out a press release yesterday announcing it. For projects, the BWI trail extension is moving along, and that's the one that's going to go up to the Nursery Road light rail. And we've come to an agreement with the state. They're going to do a portion of it under, I think it's 695. They already had a project going on, so that was good news. And we also applied for TAP funding for this year for construction of it. Safe Routes to School studies are still ongoing. The accessibility studies at the 17 schools, as well as the safety training pilot program. Also applied for another Safe Routes to School grant this year to do some more accessibility studies. And what else? We applied for another TAP grant for construction or design rather on a road in South County called Shore and Beach Road. And Dawn is no longer with the county. She retired, Dawn Thomas. And I don't know if they're going to be sending anybody to come to these meetings anymore. So I was going to just give you an update that I got from Bruce Brucci, who I think was her supervisor on the trails. So let me get my glasses. The Broadneck Peninsula Trail, phases 1 and 2 are complete. Phase 4, phase 1B College Parkway East to Bayhead Park, and phase 5 Bayhead Park to Sandy Point State Park, and Community Connector Trails is at CD phase. And phase 3 Peninsula Farm Road to Baydale Drive has been bid and is in construction. South Shore Trail, phase 2 from Sappington Station Road in Odenton to Bonner Drive and Gambrels will be in construction through fiscal year 24. They're going to begin the design of phase 3, which is Bestgate to Eisenhower Golf Course in fiscal year 24, and apply for TAP funding in 25. WB&A Trail, the bridge is under construction over the Patuxent River. And a feasibility study to identify right-of-way is needed to complete phase 4 from Watchapel Road to South Shore Trail. They were awarded $1.5 million in congressionally directed community project funding in fiscal year 23, and to design and construct and right-of-way acquisition for connectors to the trails. And that's it for trails. That's it, I guess, for the county.
Thank you, Tanya. Let's see that here. Dawn retired. We get to send her off properly. Next up is Baltimore City.
Good morning. No, good afternoon. What day is it? What time is it? Is the sun open or sun open? I don't know. Anyway, let me turn on my camera. So back to work week. We actually have someone that is coordinating that, and they're going to send me all of the events. I'll share it with the group regarding that. One event that I am privy to is that there is going to be a bike around with the mayor's office this Friday. I believe they're going to meet at the War Memorial, and there's going to be a ride, a pre-planned route throughout the city. Contact me regarding that, and then I'll forward that on, forward you on to the person that's coordinating that. Regarding projects, we are in the process of just wrapping up a lot of grant projects, that being the Baltimore Greenway, the automated bike counters, Wolf in Washington, bikeway study, or excuse me, 30% study. And we're in the process of starting up different projects, which is round 2 of automated bike counters, Martin Luther King Jr. side path, the Middle Branch segment. I put in the chat that the project manager for that particular project is, well, her name is Micah Zaslow, but I can put you in contact with her. I can't quite remember who spoke on the Patapsco Bridge project, but please let me know. And I guess the other update is we have some consultant support that is helping me keep my head straight. And so next month, I'm hoping to have a little more deliverables to share with the group, or if not, just, I guess, more stability on different things that we're doing. So that's all that we have. If there's any questions or comments, just let me know. I'm around.
Thanks,
Oh, I heard a voice.
Yeah,
It
I
sounds
just
like-
wanted to say, Patrick, that I hear you don't know morning from afternoon. I think that congratulations are in order. You have a new baby.
Hey, yeah, shouts out. Yes, I do have a beautiful baby girl. Her name is Marley, and her nickname is officially the Queen of Pout. Her pout game is strong when she's not crying. Thank you, though. I appreciate the acknowledgement.
Congratulations there, Patrick.
Congratulations, Patrick.
Yeah, thank you, Kyle. She'll be in a bike trailer soon. Maybe not too soon. My wife told me, but yeah, thanks. I appreciate that, Regina. Peace,
Yeah,
everyone.
congratulations, Patrick. Yeah, thanks for the updates. Next up is Baltimore County.
So Jesse had to leave, so I'll do my best. But we have the pit stop on Friday in front of the Towson Courthouse. We have 3 trail projects that just finished up feasibility, and we actually, leadership wanted us to go straight to 60% design on those 3. So we're getting cost estimates for that and can be moving forward. The NCR trail is pretty much finished feasibility and going to start going into design as well. We have money, I think, in next year's budget to do a complete streets pilot on Old Court Road from Liberty Road to Reisterstown Road. And then we're also doing a protected bike lane pilot that we have funds for on Old Pimlico and Green Summit. What else? That's all I can think of right now. But the 3 that are moving into design are the Six Bridges Trail in Towson, the Red Run Trail in Owings Mills, and the West East Trail that goes from Harford Road through Double Rock Park to Bel Air Road.
Thanks, Mitchell.
No problem.
Also noticed the Joint Chairman's report that comes out at the end of the General Assembly session listed that the Six Bridges Trail received $500,000 for design and construction.
Oh, that's awesome. I did not even know that.
Yeah, a lot of good projects in there. $1 million for Anne Arundel County's trail network. Yeah, I will put a link for that in the chat.
Yep, I think we got $1 million for the Complete Streets pilot, which I'm excited about. And I know the community's excited about. So it's great.
Good stuff. Thanks. Next up is Carroll County. Claire, are you still with us?
Yeah,
Yep.
So we have, our 2 safe routes to school projects, as always, that I report on. The one we are getting ready to close out, construction was complete last year, and then the second one, we're moving from design to construction, hopefully this year. And for the Patapsco Regional Greenway, the town of Sykesville submitted a 2024 TA grant for a portion of the greenway that is right off of their main street. It would be for a pretty much like a shared use path ramp. And then some on the ground shared use path that runs directly from a park to their main street. Thank you.
Thanks, Claire. Hartford County?
Good afternoon, everybody. So basically for us, we have our Bike to Work Day event on Friday. The main one will be happening right outside of our administrative building. And what's really nice is that we've been able to kind of, in conjunction with Bike to Work Day, announce our HCC study, the completion of it. So our leadership will be talking about that during Bike to Work Day, which I'm pretty sure that community will be really excited about. And of course, we're close to closing out our Route 40 study, which Charlene and BMC has taken the lead on. And that's pretty much it for Hartford County.
Thank you, David. Is anyone on from Howard County?
Hi, yes, this is Patrick Smith with the Office of Transportation. We have our Bike to Work event on Friday in downtown Columbia. Looking forward to that, expecting a good turnout. We also have an in-person event tomorrow to discuss some of our, I guess, publicize some of our upcoming projects, some new pathway and bike lane improvements that are going to be happening along Dobbin Road in Columbia, and then also Rogers Avenue in Ellicott City, which is right outside our main office here in Howard County. So really excited to talk about those. On a side note, the county's Complete Streets policy that was written received a score of 100 out of 100 from Complete Streets. I think we just found out yesterday, so people have been pretty happy about that around here. And so, yeah, and just the policy. So hopefully implementation will follow along at such a high rating. But yeah, we're really happy about that.
Yeah, congratulations on that, Patrick.
Thanks.
Queen Anne's County?
Good afternoon. This is Steve Cahoon with Queen Anne's County Public Works. We just had our kickoff meeting for the Queen Anne's County Bike and Ped Plan. It's the first one we're doing, and Kimley Horn is the consultant helping us with that. And we look to be working on that throughout the rest of the year, and hopefully by the end of the year have a final product. Our Bike and Ped Committee is very excited about doing that, as well as our Parks and Recreation Board. They're both had some pent-up demand waiting for this, so they're very happy it's moving forward, and we're happy it is too. We're considering Safe Streets for All grants, what to do with, whether to make application for those for some different projects in the county, mostly bike and ped related, separating them from traffic. So, we'll see how that evolves. And then we're working with property owners to secure property and easements along Maryland 8 South to extend the South Island Trail. Right now, the South Island Trail starts about 2 miles south of US 5301, and we're trying to fill that gap between US 5301 and where it starts now. And we're having very positive discussions. So we hope that we'll have an alignment available soon, and then move forward with the engineering for that. So that's it for us. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Steve. That's a lot of good news. Next up is the Maryland Department of the Environment. Anyone from MDA joining us today? How about Maryland Department of Planning?
Hi, this is Tina with Department of Planning. We don't have any updates today.
Yeah, thanks, Tina. From MDOT, the Maryland Highway Safety Office. Maryland Transit Administration. About MDOT State Highway Administration. Okay, well, MDOT Secretary's Office, I can provide some updates. We're in the midst of course, doing Bike to Work Day, helping support all of our sub-jurisdictions throughout the week. Also, we're in the midst of our bikeways applications process. applications are being accepted now through Thursday, June 1st. As many of you know, transportation alternatives and rec trails closed this past Monday on May 15th. Over the summer, we'll be going through the process, and awards will be made later on this fall, likely in September. Also on our workload, we're updating the bicycle pedestrian master plan for the entire state. I want to thank everyone that came out either to our event at Howard County Green Fest or joined us for our online event to talk about the plan and where we're going with it. We've been wrapping up our initial public outreach. In April, we're now kind of focusing on our stakeholder outreach. So I'm sure I'll be reaching out to many of you in the coming weeks to get your thoughts on what we need to improve on the MAGPAC plan. And then coming up next July, our next MBPAC meeting is going to be July 28th down in Anne Arundel County at Kinder Farm Park from 9 to 11 in the morning. Thanks to John Horn for helping set us up. I believe that's all we have from our side over the Secretary's office. I'll now hand it back to BMC for any other updates.
Thank you. I am dropping in the chat a link to the BMC website. We have uploaded the pedestrian infrastructure assessment toolkit there, so it's publicly available with the manual, the Excel spreadsheet, and then training videos. The member jurisdictions, you receive that data directly from us, which has the additional element of the Acopia sidewalk inventory. So let me know if you guys have any questions, but we just wanted to announce that that is now available on our website.
Thank you, Charlene. And I see that Patrick dropped the link in the chat for MTA's announcement for Bike to Work Day.
Thanks. Yeah, that lists some of our different projects. Obviously, the one Ginger spoke about earlier, as well as sort of we're investing in building more bike cars so that we've got more bike capacity on MARC trains, adding bike racks at 29 different locations, as well as a bunch of other different things. So it's all in there. And we'll be at Penn Station tomorrow morning from 6 to 8:30, and then we're going to be supporting the SHA City Hall, Baltimore City Hall, and Frederick events on Friday.
Great, thanks, Patrick. Any other updates from any of our roundtable members? Francine's reminding me that we have the pedestrian subcommittee meeting coming up on Thursday, June 22nd at 10 a.m. That'll be online, and the Walk This Way Spring Edition of the pedestrian newsletter came out just this morning. Now open it up for any other business that the advisory group to hear.
Nate, I have something.
Sure.
This is Shane from BMC. A few weeks or maybe a month ago, I emailed BPAG members from jurisdictions with asking them to fill out a survey about the process to request new sidewalks and crosswalks in their jurisdictions. So just a reminder to please fill those out if you haven't yet. And let me know if you have any questions about it. Thank you.
Hey, Shane, could you send that to me again? Or I don't want to say, have you sent this to this direct person, because that's crazy. But if you can send that to me again, I'll make sure to forward it on to the appropriate DOT planners who could answer that better than I can.
I can do that. Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Shane. Any other business for the committee? Okay, hearing none, we are close to adjournment for today. Just want to remind everyone that our next meeting will be on Wednesday, July 19th. this year, and that we will, as always, have our meetings online. And we'll have updated links to our meetings at that time. In the meantime, everybody enjoy your Bike to Work week and Bike to Work day. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good afternoon.
Thanks, likewise.
Thank you.